Hi, and welcome to Creepy Crime Story, where the darkest truths aren't imagined. They're real. A healthy mother of two, a husband who knew exactly what drugs could paralyze without leaving a mark, and a house too quiet to scream for help. This isn't a mystery. It's a medically engineered murder. And it happened not in some forgotten alleyway, but in a clean suburban home in Laredo, Texas. This is the real case of Maria Munoz and the man she trusted to heal, who chose instead to silence. The street was still. That kind of stillness you get after midnight in the nicer parts of town, where the lawns are trimmed, porch lights glow amber, and no one's really worried about locking their doors. At 1:32 a.m., September 22, 2020, a call came into the Laredo Emergency Center. A male voice, clear, controlled. He said, "My wife's not breathing. I think she overdosed on some pills." He gave his name, Joel Pilat, a 38-year-old certified registered nurse anesthetist, licensed in Texas. And that fact would matter. Later, responders arrived just minutes later at the family's home on Springfield Avenue, a quiet street bordered by middle-class homes and Spanish tile roofs. They found the front door open. Inside was Maria Munoz, age 31, lying on the master bed, eyes shut, unresponsive, no signs of trauma, no blood, no signs of a struggle. What struck paramedics immediately was the atmosphere. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic, not bleach, antiseptic, like a surgery bay. Joel was already performing chest compressions when they walked in. He was still in his scrub bottoms and a hospital t-shirt, sweat on his face but hands steady. When asked what happened, he said Maria had taken some of his prescription clonazepam, a benzodiazepine, before bed, and must have overdosed. But when one of the techs went to record and tag medications at the scene, he caught something. Joel had reached into the side drawer, pulled out a brown prescription bottle, and quietly slipped it into his scrub pocket. It was noted, and it wasn't missed. Maria was pronounced dead at 1:58 a.m. Her body was transported to the Webb County Medical Examiner's office for autopsy. Preliminary cause, unclear, but not ruled suspicious. Because here's the thing. If a woman takes her own life, there's usually context, a note, a history, a cry for help. Maria left none of that. Her phone was still charging on the nightstand. No search history for drugs, no messages, no goodbye. And just a few hours before her death, she had sent a short video message to her sister. Calm tone, steady voice. She had said, "Things are tense. I'll tell you more tomorrow." The responding officer, Deputy Joshua Landon, recorded in his report, "Husband remained composed, assisted EMS, made no call to family, observed removing medication from scene, no clear emotional distress noted." A second responder noted the same thing. He looked like he was performing a code at work, not panicked, focused, not grieving. In a case like this, things can swing either way. A person's calm could be shock, it could be training, or it could be something more deliberate. But one small detail stood out that night. One of the officers walked into the ensuite bathroom connected to the bedroom. The counter was wiped clean, no toothbrushes, no used towels, no hair ties. It looked like a demo home. Too clean, too quiet. As one detective later put it, it didn't feel like someone had just died there. It felt like someone had erased her. Maria Munoz had no prior medical conditions. No history of mental illness, no psychiatric treatment. She was 31 years old, Puerto Rican descent, and mother to two children, both under the age of 10. She had been married to Joel for nearly a decade. She didn't drink, didn't smoke, and according to her sister, she didn't take pills at all, especially not ones prescribed to her husband. Within 36 hours of her death, the autopsy began. Toxicology samples were sent off. A forensic nurse noted two details: a small puncture mark on Maria's left inner forearm, faint discoloration around the vein, consistent with recent injection. The blood draw at time of death revealed zero traces of clonazepam. Instead, preliminary findings detected propofol, midazolam, and ketamine, all IV anesthetic agents, all controlled substances, all used routinely in hospital surgery. None of these drugs could be ingested in pill form with fatal effect. They had to be injected by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Now let's pause here because this is where the story shifts from tragic to planned. This is where true crime collides with medical precision. You see, in the medical field, especially in anesthesia, there's an unspoken truth. The tools that save lives can also end them, quietly, quickly, undetectably, if you know what you're doing. And Joel Pellet, he wasn't just a nurse, he was a CRNA. He'd spent over a decade mastering IV drug combinations, dosages, and sedative interactions. He had access, he had control, and suddenly he had a dead wife. But here's the part that wasn't in the initial police reports. Maria had been scared. Not hysterical, not dramatic, just calculating. In the weeks before her death, she had installed Ring cameras around the house without telling Joel. She had started recording daily video journals, saved to a cloud folder under a separate email. She had even told a close friend, if anything happens, check the Ring footage. And my Google Drive. None of that had been accessed by Joel, not yet, but someone else soon would. Before the toxicology results came back, before the courtroom cross-examinations and expert witness testimony, there was one person already building a silent case, Maria Munoz, 31 years old, stay-at-home mother of two, no legal background, no medical training, but she was paying attention, and she started leaving behind data. In mid-2020, about 4 months before her death, Maria created a new Google account under a username that didn't include her full name. She used it to back up voice memos, photos, and later videos. This wasn't a private diary. It was structured, labeled by date, some with tags like odd behavior or late again. She never said explicitly what she feared, but what she recorded made it clear something wasn't right inside the home. One of the earliest clips shows a door slamming just out of frame, followed by a brief shot of her face, expression neutral. Then she speaks. Today he came home smelling like the OR again. He says it's nothing. He didn't work a case today. The file was time-stamped June 12, 2020. That day, hospital logs confirmed Joel Pellet had clocked out at 1:07 p.m., but security footage at the facility showed him still inside the medication prep room after hours, wearing gloves. That discrepancy would become critical later. Maria didn't tell anyone in her immediate family about the logs, but she did start asking questions, subtle ones. She reached out to a cousin who worked in healthcare, asking what medications look oily and are used to knock people out in surgery. She also texted a former friend who had been through a divorce. Is it weird if someone sleeps through loud alarms, like completely out even when the kids are screaming? What these contacts didn't know was that Maria had recently installed Ring cameras around the house, one on the front door, one above the driveway, and one in the living room. They were all synced to her phone. Joel never accessed the app. The footage became essential after her death. Detectives pulled Maria's digital cloud access with family permission and found over 27 gigabytes of archived files, including environmental recordings, low-volume audio captures, and screen recordings from her phone. She had documented gaps in Joel's location history on shared GPS, nighttime wake-ups with heart palpitations, missing items in the bathroom cabinet, specifically syringes and alcohol wipes. The most significant file was a screen recording from September 10th, 12 days before she died. In it, Maria scrolls through Joel's text history with a saved contact named Jay. The messages are casual, short, and date-stamped. She whispers into the recording, "He told me he was working overnight this day." The camera then zooms on the timestamp. Saturday, 11:48 p.m. Joel was not on the hospital schedule that night. Investigators later retrieved access logs from the hospital's drug locker. Joel's keycard had pinged the anesthesia drawer at 12:03 a.m., less than 20 minutes after that message. That data point tied directly to the footage Maria had saved. She didn't have subpoena power, but what she gathered showed alignment that digital forensics could later confirm. As one investigator wrote, her files didn't show motive, they showed means. Maria also wrote down symptoms. She used a notes app, not on her main phone, but on an older device she kept in the bedroom drawer. Tingling left arm again. Weird dreams. Don't remember anything between 10 p.m. and 4 a.m. Felt paralyzed. Woke up in closet. Don't remember getting there. She made a note under the heading, "Check Narcan," though she spelled it Narcam. That detail, though small, became chilling in hindsight. The autopsy report, days later, confirmed Narcan was found in her bloodstream. Narcan isn't something you take voluntarily unless you're actively trying to reverse an overdose. Maria had no history of opioid use. She had no way of obtaining the drug, and she hadn't visited a hospital in months. So who administered it? Behind the clean walls of a suburban home, Maria had been quietly documenting her environment like a crime scene in progress. Without ever naming a suspect, she preserved patterns, timelines, and irregularities. It wasn't paranoia, it was preservation. She didn't say, "He's going to kill me." She said, "Something's wrong." A quiet note was found among her files. Titled, "Just in Case," dated September 15, 2020. "If this gets read, I didn't do anything to myself. Please check the logs, and don't let him delete the ring footage." She signed it Maria M. It wasn't admissible as a suicide note because it wasn't one, it was a contingency plan. The ring camera on the front porch was mounted just above the light fixture. Standard angle, wide field of view, no blind spots. What it captured in the early morning hours of September 13th, 2020 had no sound other than a woman's raised voice, a knock that turned into pounding, and the unmistakable sound of tempered glass cracking under blunt force. Maria Munoz was at someone else's door. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. The house belonged to Janet Arredondo, a licensed practical nurse and former colleague of Joel Pellet. She worked at the same outpatient surgical center and had frequently taken night shifts in the recovery ward. This was not Maria's first time confronting Janet, but it was the first time it was recorded. The footage was clear. Maria stepped into frame, visibly agitated. She knocked twice, then shouted, "Open the door, Janet. I know he's inside. I'm not leaving until I get answers." After 20 seconds, she turned toward the driveway. Her phone lit up in her hand. She called someone, presumably Joel, and the screen's reflection showed his contact photo. She was on speaker. Her voice changed tone. "You said you weren't working tonight, so why is your car here?" She turned the phone toward the Ring doorbell camera deliberately. Then she walked toward the driver's side window of a silver SUV and struck it with her open palm. The camera audio spiked with a pop. The passenger side mirror cracked. She stepped back, breathing heavily. She didn't leave. Not yet. 4 minutes later, headlights from an approaching vehicle appeared in the distance. Maria turned toward the street and left frame. This footage would later be introduced as part of the timeline establishing escalating tensions, not between two romantic rivals, but between a woman trying to prove a pattern and a wall of silence that refused to acknowledge it. Detectives interviewed Janet Arredondo 3 days after Maria's death. She stated Maria had been acting unstable and had previously shown up to her home without warning or cause. She denied having a relationship with Joel Pellet outside of work. But when investigators asked if Joel had ever warned her about Maria installing surveillance devices, Janet hesitated. Then she asked for a lawyer. That alone wasn't evidence of guilt, but it reframed her role from uninvolved third party to someone aware of a conflict and potentially protecting someone else's narrative. Following standard procedure, investigators pulled neighborhood surveillance, motion alerts from adjacent homes, timestamps from the Ring cloud, and call logs from Maria's phone. That's when they uncovered something new. At 2:56 a.m., approximately 9 minutes after Maria left Janet's property, a call was placed from Joel's cell to an off-grid number traced to a secondary prepaid phone, registered under the name J. Ortiz with no data plan, used only for voice and SMS. The device had been activated just 3 weeks earlier. According to telecom logs, the same phone had pinged a tower within 300 feet of Janet's home the same night the confrontation occurred. It placed Joel, or someone using a device registered to him, within proximity of both Janet and Maria at the same moment in time. A second digital record emerged. Maria had sent an audio file to her sister later that morning. The file, dated September 13th, 6:43 a.m., was short, just her voice. "He keeps saying I'm paranoid, but I have proof. I have everything saved. I just need someone to take it seriously." In that same message, she mentioned she was going to confront Joel tonight when the kids are asleep. That conversation never happened, because 9 days later, Maria was dead. Investigators reviewing the video questioned more than just Maria's behavior. They wanted to understand why she documented so deliberately, why she archived confrontations, created backups, and noted timestamps verbally as she filmed. The conclusion wasn't fear, it was pattern building. A lead detective remarked, "She wasn't documenting chaos, she was assembling structure, timeline, proximity, motive. Whether she realized it or not, she was mapping out a case file." After securing a warrant, law enforcement obtained additional cloud-stored files, over 40 clips tied to the Ring camera system. Among them was a deleted segment automatically archived via Amazon's Ring Protect plan. It showed Joel pacing the driveway alone at 4:11 a.m. just 2 days before Maria's death, holding what appeared to be a white cloth in one hand and a small blue item, believed to be a vial or small ampule, in the other. He dropped both items into the outside garbage bin, closed the lid, and looked directly into the camera, then turned and walked back inside. The bin had already been collected by City Waste Management before police could retrieve it. Still, the clip was date-stamped and geotagged, verifying time and motion. This was the first moment in the investigation where multiple forensic vectors converged. Maria's confrontation, time-stamped ring footage, a secondary phone registered to Joel's physical proximity to both Maria and Janet, a deleted but recovered surveillance video showing unusual late-night behavior. None of these alone proved intent, but together, they undermined the initial narrative of a grieving husband and suggested preparation, coordination, and awareness. What stood out most wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't denied. The official toxicology report from the Webb County Medical Examiner's Office arrived 6 days after Maria Munoz was pronounced dead. It didn't confirm what had happened. It dismantled what had been claimed. Maria's husband, Joel Pellet, a certified registered nurse anesthetist, had stated in his initial 911 call that she'd likely overdosed on his prescription clonazepam. The bottle, allegedly left unsecured, was said to be missing several pills, but the autopsy results showed no traces of clonazepam, none, in Maria's system. That wasn't a minor discrepancy, it was a fundamental contradiction. Toxicology identified 5 primary substances: Propofol, ketamine, midazolam, Versed, morphine, lidocaine, and notably naloxone, commonly known as Narcan. Narcan is a drug administered to reverse opioid overdose, particularly respiratory depression caused by sedatives like morphine or fentanyl. It has no recreational use. It is not taken accidentally. It is administered by someone who knows why and how to do it. Maria had no medical training. She had no prescriptions for any of the 5 drugs found in her system. All were controlled substances. All required institutional access. All were intravenous only. During external examination, a single puncture site was found. Left forearm, medial vein, no bruising, minimal swelling, consistent with a small-gauge IV needle, no signs of repeated injections, no collapsed veins, no drug use history. Forensic pathologist Dr. Lucia Navarro recorded the wound as clean, non-self-inflicted, aligned with recent administration of anesthetic agents. The cause of death was ruled cardiorespiratory failure due to mixed drug intoxication involving intravenous anesthetics. The manner of death, pending investigation. At this stage, law enforcement had 2 angles to consider. 1, was Maria injected by someone else? 2, if so, how did that person acquire and deliver those drugs without detection? Records from the surgical center where Joel worked showed his last logged shift was September 18th, 4 days before Maria's death. Keycard logs indicated he had accessed the anesthesia room at 5:17 p.m. that day. That part aligned, but the facility was not open over weekends. On September 20th, a Sunday, a motion-activated door camera captured Joel entering the employee side entrance. His badge didn't log entry. The back door had been propped open by a traffic cone. The hospital reported no authorized access at that time. Further lab analysis compared the lot numbers of the drugs found in Maria's bloodstream to pharmacy inventory batches at the surgical center. 2 of the compounds, Propofol and midazolam, matched a batch that had been signed out under Joel's credentials on September 18th. The volume used was consistent with 1 standard 20 milliliter vial of each. That meant not only had Maria received medical-grade sedatives, but the exact vials used were traceable. Chain of custody was broken, and only one person had the means and motive to move the vials off-site. The Narcan in Maria's system posed a separate question. It was not part of the drug kit signed out. It was not in the center's regular inventory, but it was found in Joel's emergency bag, kept in his personal vehicle trunk. It had been legally prescribed as part of a training kit but had not been registered as used. Detectives logged the vial as partially empty. According to toxicology, the presence of Narcan may have temporarily slowed Maria's decline, but not reversed it. The combination of multiple anesthetics overwhelmed her system. One forensic investigator later stated, This was not a spontaneous act. The dosages were proportional. The drug sequencing was clinical. The Narcan was not a mistake, it was part of the staging. At this point in the case, homicide investigators had no direct eyewitnesses, no confession, no physical struggle, no note, but they had a tox screen disproving the overdose narrative, a clean puncture wound inconsistent with self-administration, controlled substances sourced from Joel's workplace under his name, unauthorized facility access logs, and Narcan administered from his private kit. It wasn't a question of what killed Maria, that had been answered. The remaining question was, why had it been made to look like she had done it to herself? In controlled environments like surgical centers, drugs don't just go missing. Every milliliter is tracked, every withdrawal logged, every signature recorded. Anesthetics aren't stored casually. They're secured in coded cabinets, accessed under surveillance, reviewed weekly by compliance officers. So when investigators began reconstructing how a mix of propofol, midazolam, morphine, and ketamine ended up in Maria Munoz's bloodstream without a prescription, they focused on one question: who signed them out? Joel Pellot had been employed at a private outpatient surgical clinic in Laredo since 2017. The facility didn't handle trauma cases or emergency surgeries. It specialized in elective procedures, colonoscopy, cataract removal, minor orthopedic operations. As a CRNA, Joel had direct access to anesthetic inventories, including propofol, ketamine, and Versed midazolam. He had completed all annual medication handling certifications and was cleared to prep patient-controlled sedation for attending physicians. Records show that on September 18, 2020, Joel signed out a full sedation pack at 5:17 p.m., the last entry before the weekend. The list included a 20 milliliter vial of propofol, a 5 milliliter ampule of midazolam, and a vial of lidocaine. No patients were scheduled. The kit wasn't assigned to any case. Two pharmacy techs who processed the log that day later told investigators they assumed it was carryover stock for a Monday procedure. No one verified the return. That same weekend, facility surveillance captured Joel re-entering the staff-only area through a back access point on Sunday, September 20th, around 9:46 p.m. No badge swipe was recorded. A temporary camera installed near the dumpster area, which had been installed after recent employee theft reports, showed him exiting with a black duffel bag. That footage was preserved. Interviewed under subpoena, a staff anesthesiologist recalled that Joel kept a go bag in his car, common for those working multiple hospitals. It contained scrubs, gloves, syringes, IV start kits, and sometimes expired saline for practice insertion. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that several items, particularly the propofol and Versed vials, had been signed out but never returned or documented as waste. According to the hospital's own quarterly inventory reconciliation, conducted just days after Maria's death, there was a shortage of 5 vials, all traceable to Joel's checkout activity. When asked why he had taken the drugs, Joel stated in his initial interview, "I must have forgotten to log the return. I've done that before." But the policy was clear. All anesthetics must be logged in, out, and reconciled per shift, even if not used. A compliance manager later testified, "You don't forget propofol. It's not aspirin." Detectives examined Joel's vehicle under warrant. In the trunk beneath a folded blanket, they found 1 pair of nitrile gloves, a used IV start kit wrapper, a portable cooler bag with temperature-stabilizing gel packs, and an empty Narcan cartridge, partially administered. The cooler bag was the same model issued by the hospital for medication transport between surgical wings. Technically, there was no evidence of illegal transport if the drugs had been used for patient care, but there was no corresponding patient. Forensic analysis of Maria's bloodstream, cross-referenced with lot numbers, confirmed the propofol batch matched the same withdrawal record made by Joel on September 18th. The system wasn't built to catch a crime, but it did track consistency, and Joel's paperwork had none, no chart. No signature for return, no waste documentation, no disposal log, and no response when asked where the remaining ampules had gone. At this point in the investigation, the focus shifted. From suspicion to logistics. From what happened to how it was made possible. This wasn't a crime of passion. The drugs weren't taken in the moment. They were transported, stored, and delivered over a planned sequence of days. One of the detectives later wrote, "He didn't just take the drugs home. He moved them like they were tools, carefully, deliberately, and quietly." This chapter of the case revealed the operational gaps that made the crime feasible. Joel didn't need to sneak through shadows or fake credentials. He just needed no one watching the paperwork too closely. When it comes to unraveling the truth in a missing persons case, what the suspect doesn't say often weighs as heavily as what they claim out loud. But sometimes it's not their words at all, it's their digital trail. And in the case of Angela Bird, the breakthrough didn't come from a tearful confession or a witness sighting. It came from a cell tower. On the morning of April 2nd, just 4 days after Angela was reported missing, a technical analyst with the sheriff's office ran a location query on Craig Thetford's mobile phone number. A subpoena to his cell provider had granted access to tower pings dating back to March 25th, the last day Angela was seen alive. What the logs revealed was disturbing. Contrary to Craig's sworn affidavit that he had stayed home after 8:30 p.m. on March 25th, his phone had pinged off a tower 5 miles west of his residence around 10:17 p.m. Not just once, but twice within a 30-minute interval. The area it covered: a wooded stretch bordering the Hollow Creek Wildlife Preserve, an undeveloped lot where no residences stood. When officers overlaid this data with GPS positioning retrieved from Google Timeline, also obtained via warrant, it painted a stark contradiction. Craig's phone had been in motion between 10:10 and 11:02 p.m., headed south then east, looping back toward home just before midnight. To law enforcement, that was more than a red flag. It was a breach in the suspect's alibi. That same afternoon, investigators began a sweep of the Hollow Creek area, starting from the coordinates flagged in the mobile ping. Within 3 hours, canine units brought in from neighboring Lexington County hit on a scent trail approximately 40 feet from the gravel path entrance. What they found there wasn't a body, but it was damning. A torn piece of floral fabric partially buried beneath pine needles, matching the pattern of the blouse Angela had been wearing on the day she disappeared. Nearby, a small trace of blood was lifted from a broken tree branch. It was later confirmed by lab analysis to contain a partial DNA match to Angela. Back at headquarters, a forensic team cross-checked Craig's phone data against Angela's own phone history. While her device had been offline since the early hours of March 26th, its last confirmed tower ping aligned, uncannily, with Craig's location during his 10:17 p.m. detour. This placed both their devices within the same 500-meter radius for nearly 12 minutes. To add to that, Angela's Google account, which had been synced to her Gmail and YouTube on her phone, showed an unusual data disconnect around 10:33 p.m. that night. According to digital forensics experts, this could indicate a forced shutdown, removal of the battery, or complete signal loss, consistent with phone destruction or removal from network coverage. While the team awaited a full search warrant for Craig's garage and vehicle, they focused on consolidating witness statements. A neighbor who lived 2 doors down from the Thetfords told deputies she had seen Craig loading something into the back of his pickup late on the night of March 25th. At the time, she thought it might be a piece of furniture. Looked like a rolled rug or a bundle, she stated, but didn't question it further. Her security camera, unfortunately, didn't capture the street angle. What investigators needed now was something material, something that would bind the digital evidence with a physical act. On April 4th, the warrant came through. Officers arrived at Craig Thetford's property with a full crime scene unit, focusing first on the truck and detached garage. A luminal test on the truck bed returned faint traces of blood, inconsistent with routine use. A deeper analysis conducted the following day found 2 separate blood samples, one of them confirmed to be Angela's. The turning point, however, came when they opened a large blue storage container, sealed with zip ties and tucked behind a stack of disused lumber. Inside were 2 women's shoes, both dirt-streaked and heavily damaged. The soles matched impressions found at the Hollow Creek site. A clump of hair found inside the container later tested positive as belonging to Angela Bird. From a procedural standpoint, the narrative had shifted. What began as a routine missing persons case now met the threshold for a homicide investigation, albeit without a confirmed body. That complicated matters legally, but did not deter law enforcement. What they had was a growing mountain of circumstantial evidence backed by digital forensics and physical recovery. As one investigator commented off record, he thinks we won't get a conviction without a body. But digital evidence doesn't lie, and he left fingerprints on every bite. When investigators returned to the Thetford residence on April 6, 2025, the search was no longer preliminary. The warrant now authorized a full forensic sweep of the garage, attic, both vehicles, and Craig's personal computer systems. The scene wasn't chaotic, but every step taken was intentional. Technicians focused first on the garage floor. A small, discolored patch near the southeast corner had initially escaped notice. Under luminol, it fluoresced. A follow-up phenolphthalein test confirmed the presence of blood. Swabs were taken, and within 48 hours, DNA results matched Angela Bird. It wasn't just the presence of blood. It was where it was found. Beneath a cracked storage tile, technicians uncovered a strand of long, dark hair and a fragment of a cell phone screen. The model was consistent with Angela's missing device, a Samsung Galaxy S20. Nearby, a screwdriver wrapped in a cloth bore additional traces of blood. No fingerprints. Craig had wiped them clean, but the partial print lifted from the tool's handle aligned with Angela's right thumb. At this point, the DA's office moved. On April 9, 2025, Craig Thetford was formally arrested for the murder of Angela Bird. He was taken into custody at a service station off I-20 attempting to drive west toward Alabama. His vehicle was impounded. He offered no resistance, nor did he speak. But the silence meant nothing now. The evidence was stacking in every direction. Inside his truck, officers recovered a printed Google Maps route to an isolated cabin in the Talladega National Forest. The relevance wasn't just the escape plan. The map had handwritten notes in the margin. Burn location, clean cloths. Don't forget hammer. To investigators, it read like a checklist, hastily written and abandoned. The arrest report filed by the Richland County Sheriff's Office noted Craig's demeanor as blank, non-reactive. He requested an attorney immediately and declined to answer any questions during the initial interview. But he didn't need to say anything. His hard drive had already begun to speak for him. Computer forensics pulled browser history from Craig's desktop spanning March 20th to April 1st. Searches included, can you be charged for murder without a body? How long does DNA last on wood? And how to delete location data permanently. Investigators also found multiple deleted downloads related to mobile wiping tools and bleach decontamination guides. The digital trace was damning, but what unsettled detectives most wasn't technical. It was human. A recovered draft email, never sent, titled, "If you're reading this," was found in Craig's deleted folder. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but the content described Angela as a burden, manipulative, and ended with, "I couldn't take the pressure anymore. She ruined everything." It didn't include a confession, but it revealed a mindset, one not of grief, but of rationalized intent. Angela's family was notified of the arrest that same evening. Her sister told the press, "We just want to bring her home." That remained the only public comment. The arrest of Craig Thetford on May 17, 2024, marked a decisive moment in a case that had already disturbed a close-knit Alabama community. After months of silence, speculation, and fragmented evidence, the Madison County District Attorney's Office formally charged Craig with capital murder, victim missing and presumed dead. The charge was not symbolic. It was grounded in a methodical accumulation of forensic proof and behavioral indicators that painted a chillingly coherent picture of premeditated homicide, even in the absence of a body. Angela Bird, last seen alive in February, had by now been missing for over 3 months. Despite exhaustive searches along Interstate 565 and areas around Huntsville and Triana, her remains have never been recovered. However, investigators emphasize that Alabama law permits prosecution for murder even without a body, provided there is overwhelming circumstantial and forensic evidence. This was not unprecedented, but the decision to proceed reflected the DA's confidence in the case's integrity. In the affidavit supporting Craig's arrest, authorities detailed a disturbing timeline. Video surveillance showed Angela returning to the home in the early morning hours of February 28th. She was never seen leaving again. Craig was recorded in the following hours making multiple trips to remote areas near the Tennessee River, discarding what appeared to be heavy, wrapped items. A subsequent search warrant uncovered Angela's blood in multiple locations throughout the residence, including on the bed frame, the bedroom wall, and in the garage, suggesting attempted cleaning and concealment. Human hair with root DNA, confirmed to be Angela's, was recovered from a drain trap and under a damaged floorboard. The couple's Ring camera data was deleted remotely shortly after Angela's last appearance, but partially recovered by forensic technicians. Craig, when questioned post-arrest, invoked his right to remain silent. His defense counsel issued a brief public statement declaring the charges unfounded and called the arrest a rush to judgment, given the absence of a body. But that argument held little weight when weighed against the breadth of the physical evidence. Community reaction was swift. Local advocacy groups for domestic violence survivors held vigils outside the Madison County Courthouse. Former colleagues of Angela, especially at her previous job in the healthcare sector, began circulating her story as a cautionary tale about isolation and coercive control. The recurring theme wasn't just grief, it was recognition. Her disappearance was no anomaly. It fit a disturbing pattern familiar to too many women in long-term abusive dynamics: gradual emotional erasure, financial entrapment, and finally, physical erasure. As of July 24, 2025, Craig Thetford remains in custody at the Madison County Jail, denied bond, awaiting trial. The pre-trial hearing is scheduled for fall 2025, with prosecutors seeking to proceed under Section 13A 540A10 of the Alabama Criminal Code, which defines capital murder involving victims under 14 or cases with aggravating circumstances, here the concealment and destruction of a human body. Though the legal machinery now moves forward, the emotional resolution is far less tidy. Angela's children, now under the care of relatives, still ask questions that have no clear answers. Her friends speak of dreams in which she's still alive. And law enforcement continues to receive tips, none substantiated, that her remains may lie somewhere deeper in the Tennessee Valley woods, or that Craig may have had help. This case forces us to confront a painful truth. In many fatal domestic violence incidents, the signs were always there, but we're often conditioned to dismiss them unless bruises or restraining orders appear. Angela's case leaves behind more than an empty home. It leaves a warning, sharp and unforgettable. The lack of a recovered body is not a gap in the narrative. It's the story itself. A woman so thoroughly erased by control, manipulation, and fear that even in death she remains physically missing. But her absence speaks louder than silence. And now, the system has finally begun to speak for her. I don't know if Angela ever had a chance to imagine her life differently, but if her story teaches us anything, it's this: silence isn't safety, and love without respect is a slow form of erasure. If you ever find yourself shrinking to survive someone else's presence, please know that you deserve more. This case isn't just about justice. It's about prevention, awareness, and breaking cycles before they become headlines. What do you think? Do we do enough to protect people before it's too late? If this video reached your heart, tell me where you're watching from, or what you'd say to someone in Angela's shoes. And if it didn't connect, I'd still love to know why. Every voice matters. If you found this story meaningful, subscribe to follow more real stories that matter.